Plain Truth, a show where we explore some of the mysteries and anomalies of the world around us. I'm your host, Plain, and joining me this week we have special guest Jay Weidner, and also Oolong Rabbit, a friend of mine. Jay, thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Well, this week we wanted to talk about an important topic for those of us in the conspiracy world, which is, who was Stanley Kubrick? And you're just the man to ask. So I guess we would get started and say, when did you become interested in, I guess what you would say is the hidden side of Stanley Kubrick?
It's for me. It happened actually about 2 weeks after he died. In I believe it was March of 1999, and I was in the middle of researching my first book that I co-wrote, and about the Cross of Henday in alchemy, and I was deeply immersed in that research, and I was beginning to realize through that research that there were these higher orders of societies that knew a lot more about secrets and things than the rest of the world. In other words, they're like a breakaway civilization that's been around us for a long time, sort of like what's pictured in the Harry Potter movies. And it's almost like that's how they're described in these alchemical texts as societies that dress in medieval clothing and live up in castles and teach children, special children, the magical arts, and they look at the rest of us as kind of I forget what they call them in Harry Potter.
Muggles.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. When I saw the first Harry Potter film, I jaw dropped because it's actually taken from a story about Fulcanelli, whom was the subject of this book I was writing at the time that Stanley died. So I was over in France and wasn't really paying attention because I was even actually trying to find one of these castles, and when he died, and so it wasn't really till I got back to the States, a week after or so, that he died, that I realized that he died. It really hit me, and I always loved his films. So I was just like, stunned. And because I was so immersed in this hermetic alchemical research about the Cross of Henday and the secret societies that built it, and knew that the sun has this, that we go through this cyclic thing, and that there's order and reorder and all these things that were just mind blowing. I watched, I didn't watch. I sat and I thought about the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. Excuse me. And it was about 2 weeks or so after Stanley died, and in a flash I realized that the entire subtext to the film was really the exact teachings of this high-level alchemical secret order. And and I quickly wrote it down into an article called Alchemical Kubrick, and it got a lot of hits, millions of hits, and and people taking it, and of course a lot of people stealing the ideas. One guy actually lifted the entire article and just stuck it in his book, and then took credit for it. And but that was fine. And the idea finally began spreading that that Kubrick had embedded all this alchemical stuff into the film. And that's when I got into the black stone and the monolith, which is the progenitor of all things, which comes from alchemy, and it's also depicted in the film 2001. how this causes the evolution of man and his spirit to reach out to higher order and complexities, and his traveling through the four domains of time and space in the movie exactly match the kind of initiatory patterns that you would go through if you were in this high-level secret society, and so it became, obvious at a certain point that there was no accident. In fact, he actually, if he'd gone through with it and actually had him go to Saturn like he wanted, and looks like he probably was denied it because it was just too obvious. Then we can see then that which in the book it is Saturn, not in the movie. He claims that he changed it because it was too hard to make the rings of Saturn. So anyway, that's how I came to, is in this flash on a cold, snowy Saturday in the Rocky Mountains, thinking about Stanley Kubrick, and then and the upshot of the whole thing is that I told my wife all of this, and she was busily writing it down, stunned as I unleashed an entire interpretation in like maybe a 2-hour period. And then I drove down to the local video store, and they were playing 2001 on the TV in the video store. And a kid was standing there, the kid that ran the store was standing there watching the movie, and I walked up and I said, "You're watching this movie?" And he goes, "Yeah, man. I've watched it like 10 times, and I always wanted to know what it was about." And I rented it and took it home and watched it, and I realized I was right. And from then on, I've been on a hunt through his films to find what it is he's saying. And each film is a different revelation, and each revelation is a revelation about what we're what we are kind of discovering, about the big truth, about reality, about mind control and demons and controlling secret societies and initiatory things and transformation and.
Well, Jay, to me, a lot of this seemed pretty. I don't know if the word is clear, but it's clear that there were other messages in his films, and I'm wondering if it started around the time of Lolita. I mean, some people, maybe you think it started with 2001. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Oh no, I definitely agree with you. His real last work of art that he did before he was taken in was in some ways his greatest work, I think, Paths of Glory, and that was a real, true, sincere Stanley Kubrick effort. And then he went from that to Spartacus, and I believe that's when he went to L.A. and shot Spartacus, and he hated L.A. He said, quote, "There's a malignancy hanging over the city," and I think it was in L.A. there in the early '60s that he went to see this place that was really a CIA mind control house, which sat on the top of Laurel Canyon overlooking the city.
Well, you're talking about the topic that Dave McGowan is writing a book about.
I am,
the Laurel Canyon. Mm-hmm.
I am, and if you go to his site and you look at the picture of the hotel, whatever it is, at this building, right? It's exactly not exactly, but really close to the building that was chosen
Overlook.
The Overlook in The Shining. So you can see that there's and it was called the Mount Lookout or something. Mount Lookout, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This building, and very close in name. so it's just a lot of odd similarities, right? And that he would be there at that time, and then taken in, and then he was still renegade until after Dr. Strangelove. So that was when he was taken into the larger thing. But Definitely the touches that he adds into Lolita are that Peter Lawford and his lady friend are fronting for some kind of ring, and the ring is scooping up, young children, and it seems to be, and what's funny about all this is I've been saying all this now since 2009 when I unloaded finally, and I've been met with virtual dead silence, right, by the straight cinema world, right, except for Rodney Asher, who featured me in his film Room 237 and did a fairly respectable job of it without trying to mock me, at least not too much. And but then now on YouTube, you can Google Kubrick and the Illuminati, and there, in a jaw-dropping half hour, is probably the most revered film critic in the world, Michael Ciment. He's a French film critic who wrote several books on Kubrick and became the only guy that Kubrick would do interviews with. And there he is, for 30 straight minutes, and you can read it, the sort of subtitles, and you can see. And basically, what he's done is he has obviously listened to my interviews and seen my films, because outside of the moon landings, he is absolutely saying every single thing that I'm saying to you about all of the Kubrick films. Everything. Mind Control, that it was in the Rothschild house, and Eyes Wide Shut was shot in the Rothschild house. He talks about all of it. And this is like the most revered film critic, in the world. He's like an 83-year-old guy right now, and he's just come out with all this.
Well, maybe he's old enough now that he can.
Well, it's a stunning revelation, because he is the only guy that Stanley would talk to. All right, and and here he is virtually saying it. You know what I mean? Saying everything about pedophilia, the child at the end of Eyes Wide Shut, walking into the bears. Everything that I say, it might as well be me, and I'm happy he's doing it, because I'm going to take the whole thing and use it in my next film, just as proof that there's somebody with a lot of legitimacy who knew Stanley very well, who absolutely follows my exact interpretation. He doesn't go into the moon landing, I'll give you that, but every single thing else that I'm saying about the progression of Stanley through his films, from the from the destruction of the feminine in Full Metal Jacket to Mind Control and Clockwork Orange, all the way through. It's amazing.
So
Jay,
your next. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so your next film is going to focus primarily on Eyes Wide Shut, is it, Jay?
Well, yeah, that and AI. I've got a lot to say about what I think Stanley's version of AI would have been, and why that version probably would not be allowed.
I think his friend Arthur C. Clarke, I believe he was a known pedophile too, was he not?
Yeah, he wrote articles in favor of it. Probably, yeah. He wanted it. He wanted it to be lawful. He was, it's got.
There's no. I was just going to say, there's no real proof that Kubrick condoned any of that. I think he was more or less exposing it, right?
I don't know. I think, he could have gotten into trouble. Who knows? It wouldn't be hard. But at the end, there's no doubt by Eyes Wide Shut that he's condemning it. I mean, there's no doubt. You can say what you want about the film and all of its flaws and everything, but we know who's the bad guys in the movie. And
well, Jay, I think, didn't you say once in an interview that somebody who had worked with Kubrick said that when it was shown, he was walking around nervously smoking cigarettes, saying they're going to kill me or something like that?
Yeah, that kind of kid. Yeah, he was saying a lot of stuff. That was one of the things that the guy said. Yeah, and he said he was like really pissed, and he was, they didn't like it either, and yeah.
Well, we don't know, but I mean, the bigger question is, like discussing Kubrick, where and when and what happened to him at what point. I mean, people get into things where they're taking advantage of it, and then over time they change, and then they turn against it. And so the move to Los Angeles is probably the big thing, right?
Yeah, it looks like his time in Los Angeles and then his escape as fast as he could to England. And, there's just so many angles to the dang thing. I can just go on and on. Robert Temple, who wrote The Serious Mystery, who's a really a riot of a guy, told me years ago, and he was friends with Arthur C. and Stanley, that, Stanley was like obsessed with, and I'm going to interview Robert if I can get to London and get all this on tape. But that, Stanley was really into everything Nazi, books and drawings and everything. He was obsessed with it. And, some people say, well, he was getting ready to do one of his so-called Holocaust film, which was Aryan Papers, I think it was called. But I don't think, and that could be true because he was, a really good researcher, but I think he was also into the science of what Joseph Farrell is finding, which is, because he was hanging with Arthur C. Clarke, who was hanging with the very top scientific intelligentsia of both Britain and the United States, which were at the top of the food chain. And Arthur C. Clarke was a deeply revered person because of his science fiction writing. He'd also invented the satellite. And so you can see there's an underlying chain of things here.
Just in relation to that Nazi comment, I think one of his scriptwriters actually quoted him as saying that Hitler was right about everything.
I heard that somewhere. I haven't tracked that down, but his co-writer for Eyes Wide Shut and wrote a book called Eyes Wide Open about his last, dealings with Stanley right before he died. And he was Jewish, I forget his name, and he called Stanley an anti-Semite. And it's interesting that his wife was, part of a pretty wealthy, German family, and her brother was Leni Riefenstahl's cinematographer, and Leni Riefenstahl was Hitler's filmmaker, and she was truly a great filmmaker. And so you can see, I'll say, well, that's so strange, but it isn't really, because once you look at it and you see what's going on, it's a kind of a built-in kind of fabric of secret societies that never really lose. And he was brought in, to help do one thing, and he thought it was pretty cool probably at first. Who knows? But then soon, maybe not.
Well, I got another question along those lines. A lot of people have accused Kubrick of being a misanthrope, and kind of having an abusive personality, shooting scenes way more often than is rational, things like that. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that sometimes he probably was punishing, or maybe not so much punishing, but taking the pompous out of certain people that were too pompous.
Jack Nicholson?
Actually, Jack didn't get that many takes.
Oh, did he? Okay.
No, it was what's her name that got murdered. What was her name? I'm forgetting. The woman, Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I hear he did like 20, 30 takes, driving around her mind, and then Jack come in, do it in like 2 minutes, and go back to his room. So anyway, but people don't. What people don't understand is that a lot of times what he's doing is that he has a symbolic language that is being formed on the screen, which is using juxtaposition of actors and background and lighting patterns and things that are on the set, and so what he's doing with these takes, I believe, is he's moving the camera usually for these takes, and he's looking for this magical moment when all of the elements that he's created to create a symbolic subtext form, and just for a brief moment. So it's like a dance, and you have to almost like blur your eyes when you're watching a lot of his movies to catch the beautiful way that he does it. And it's done, and it was developed with The Shining, and it got pretty good. And it's just too bad he didn't have at least 2 or 3 shots through Eyes Wide Shut to firm it up and make it a little bit better movie.
There's another possible. Let me finish along on this one.
Sure.
There's another possibility, Jay, and that is there's a quote that he essentially preferred editing far more than any other aspect of movie making.
Yeah.
And that by having, let's say, for the sake of the argument, 50 shots of something, the people around him wouldn't know what he was thinking necessarily, right?
That's
so if he wanted to embed these things with, for example, the Apollo program in it, and you had 50 to choose from, the actors wouldn't necessarily understand that was the point of what he was doing.
Exactly right.
And so I could easily imagine that with the movie Eyes Wide Shut, because somehow Cruise and Kidman, to me, seem like they're, I don't know how to put it, but they're perfect for the part, so to speak. Like they wouldn't know what's going on.
Yes, that's exactly right. And they didn't. And they still don't, probably.
And they still don't. Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, even Michael Cement grabs on to my idea, which I'm also grateful for, which is that one of the subtexts of Eyes Wide Shut is that it's the story of L. Ron Hubbard as the naval captain stealing, I'm going to forget her name, but Jack Parsons' alien-looking, tall, redhead wife, Jack Parsons being one of the founders of NASA, and L. Ron, of course, being one of the founder of Scientology. Kubrick's daughter had been not taken, she joined of her own free will, the Scientologists, and and Kubrick was trying to get her back probably in some way, and he was trying, and so by cooking a deal with Cruise and Kidman, he possibly was hoping that he could get her back to England, but no dice. So that led to probably him putting in the subtext story of Tom Cruise being Jack Parsons, a handsome, guy, married to this tall redhead who looks angelic, or actually, Jack Parsons' wife looked more like alien.
Demonic?
And, yeah, no, a little bit. And she just died recently, actually. And so there's all these sub stories going on through Eyes Wide Shut that haven't been explored that much. But one of them is that one, and he's actually talking about L. Ron Hubbard's kind of sort of dirty little past, if you know what I mean, by including it in. And it gets better though. There's all sorts of sub stories going on in the movie that are just really fascinating. And but the problem is that he didn't really have time to finish it in the right way. You really got to continue cutting.
Have you heard the theory that a lot of the characters in Eyes Wide Shut are thinly veiled portraits of some of the powers that be? Like, for instance, the Hungarian doctor was a caricature of George Soros.
I believe all that, yeah. Or it would definitely be something like that, because that's exactly right. There, it was especially
Brzezinski.
Malik is Brzezinski, the Russian.
It would probably be people even higher than that. People you don't even know, really super high people. That's who he would be talking about at that party, and so it would be like the very, very top, New York, power. And you have to ask yourself who that is, and and what they do, and he's telling you, and it's pretty much blatant as far as I can tell. And there's other things in Eyes Wide Shut, that if you watch it in the right way, you can see that at the beginning when she's dancing with the Hungarian. Kubrick is having the dance go where and she's getting drunker, and he's trying to seduce her, and there's these lights that are on the wall behind them that are Christmas lights that are patterned in these 8-pointed stars, and at the one moment she never quite gets into frame of these stars that are behind her as the camera's rotating around the couple as they're dancing, and but it's almost every time. It's like and he is almost close to seducing her every time, and this is all going on at once. And then finally, when she decides not to do it, she frames perfectly, and she's crowned in this like a queen, right, with the. And it's just for this brief frames, and it's that kind of thing that you start looking for, and you begin understanding, and then you can see that he's really creates a tapestry that is trying to say something else. And once you understand that, then you can begin to see things that are all over the place.
There's another angle in this. The story it was based on, the Dream novella, was about Vienna before World War I, right? So it was the peak and collapse of an empire that got went away in history. And so when I first saw the movie, I thought maybe he's referring to modern New York is what Vienna was 100 years ago. It's about to collapse. So this is all coming to an end, and they can't even see it.
Yeah.
I mean, just as an example, before World War I started, there was perhaps the best chess player in the world who tied in a match for the title. And during World War I, the guy starved to death in Vienna. A young man starved to death in a place that was, as they saw it, the most civilized, best place on earth. In other words, it was all collapsing. They didn't even realize the whole world was coming tumbling down.
Yep.
And so that I'm just trying to say, I think there might have been a background that the reason for choosing New York and that elite environment was not just that; it was also these folks can't even see their world is built on sand.
I think you're absolutely right, and they don't understand. Tom and Cruise and Kidman, the Harfords, they don't understand at the beginning anything, and at the end, all they know is that they're surrounded by demons, and they don't know what else to do. And it's kind of a downer if you think about it at the end. And at the same time, it's funny because how do you even manage to get it made? And that's the thing I can't quite understand. I think he thought he had his contract that he could make anything he wanted. And he was really tired of it. It had been a long time since he made a film. And I believe, and that's what my next project is about, is that he decided to do Eyes Wide Shut and AI, and he developed both scripts, and he was ready to do them both back to back, and then he was going to retire. And they were going to reveal everything that he wanted to say about our current reality. But you had to watch them like bookends or like a dual set, and I just think that after the first one and then the second one examined, and it was just never happened the way it went. We've been quite revelatory though. So I think we can see, what this is,
A couple interesting points about Eyes Wide Shut again is the Hungarian fellow's name is Fandor, as in.
Yep.
Hans Fandor. The other thing that's quite is the chanting Orthodox Christian Mass. That just creeps me right out.
Oh yeah, and there's all the names. I'm gonna space out the name that Sidney Pollack plays, but in Yiddish it means stone mason.
Ziegler.
Yeah, Ziegler. It means stone, layer or stone mason, or mason. And he's obviously the head of this party. It's obviously him and his wife that are looking down at Tom when he walks in the door, and it's just amazing. And then it's like Nicole Kidman really was at the orgy, and that's something else that could be a possibility of being cut out. Something like that. We don't know, but there's just a lot of strange things about the movie that don't make sense as far as continuity. Now, I was recently, a few months back, spent the weekend at a conference with Leon Vitali, who is Stanley Kubrick's assistant from 1975 maybe until he died. And he was a very close assistant, and he absolutely hated me on my Kubrick theories, but he liked me as a guy. So we get into it, and it was really a lot of fun. And of course, every time he'd criticize me, I'd say, well, you weren't around until 1975. If he's not going to tell his wife, why is he going to tell you, right? And it just drives him crazy, right? Because really, the events I'm talking about happened in, for him faking the moon landing were in 1965, 1966. I believe it was all down in the can and 70 millimeter. Stanley went off to finish, 2001, the way he wanted to make it. Now no one would tell him what to do. Felt like king of the world. The film came out, it was a guaranteed hit because they owned it, and it was, and everybody loved it, and but nobody knew why they loved it. Very strange, and so that's really how it works. And so once you have embody the whole entire work of it, then you can see the message. The message is in the body of the work of the films is pretty clear, pretty concise. There's 2 or 3 messages, and they really come at us as warnings.
Well, I have a kind of a related question. I think there are now lots of people on the internet. You mentioned all these YouTubes out there. There are probably dozens or hundreds of people trying to look through Kubrick's films frame by frame and see what they find. And to a large degree, you're the leader of starting this movement. But what have people found that you've found interesting?
Well, probably the second runner-up or runner-up to it behind me is, although I think Michael Cement is about to try to jump in the game. He's old, wants one last stab at it, so he's probably going to get a book out before I get out. Anyway, I'm going to forget his name now. I don't want to forget his name. Oh, well, I can't remember his name. Anyway, forgive me out there if you're listening. If I remember in the next 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I'll mention it. But he lives in Toronto, and he's gone through frame by frame. He has some videos up on YouTube, although he hasn't really posted as much as he probably should, because he's just found these interesting patterns of like animals and faces, and in the way that Kubrick's lining up his shots. And it's some people say, well, that's just way over the top, and I say, yeah, it might be. And then I start thinking about Stanley and the kinds of things that he's doing. And, then I say, okay, there's at least a possibility that Stanley was lining up his shots to make it look like, there's 5 bears trying to, grab Danny as he comes down the stairs, which, these are the kinds of things that he's finding in the woodwork and, in the way that the images are blended together and things. And in some cases, it's kind of convincing. Some cases, it's utterly ridiculous. So he doesn't know how to go discern, but he's on to something, is all I'm saying. A lot of people are on to things. The guy that ran The Shining, forward and backward, and then superimposed it over each other, that was quite amazing and incredible. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but
what's in that?
Pardon me?
What is in that? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I might be able to YouTuber it. I don't know. What somebody did was they took The Shining, and they started the very first frame, and then they took the very last frame and over the first frame, and then they superimposed the film. So you're watching the film go backwards and forwards at the same time.
What revelations came out of that, though, Jay? Was there anything in particular?
Well, yeah, it's actually quite amazing, and you'll watch it all the way to the end because it's truly astonishing. The scenes are almost invariably, a reflection exactly in time and space of the scene down range that reflects exactly what's happening in that scene. You know what I mean? It's like at the beginning, Jack is being interviewed while he's trying to kill Danny, right? And being interviewed, being told about the guy that's killing the children, right? And Jack is running down the thing with his axe trying to kill Danny superimposed over it. And this goes all the way through the film to, then there's at the moment when you hit the center of the film, which is a very interesting moment. And so you can see that, but when you watch this, that that the guy was doing something beyond normal, just making a film.
What about subliminal stuff? Is there a lot of that?
Sounds like a recipe for insanity.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. He's doing it all over the place. He's lining up things so that there's subliminal things, in the room 237, and give away, the Jack meeting the hotel manager, in one frame of their greeting to each other. He says, "Nice to see you, Barry Morris." Barry Morris, that's not his name. Barry, somebody, I can't remember his name now. Stands up, says, "Nice to see you." Right when he says, "Nice to see you," he lines up with the paper tray, and it gives him a hard on, right? There's like all these subtexts underneath The Shining, about, homosexuality and pedophilia that are put in to the film in a kind of such a subtle way that you really don't notice it. And somehow I've got to try to show it in a way that is responsible, and that's taking me an awfully long time. But and I believe that it actually is kind of a creepy film in a lot of ways, not because there's something on the screen going on that's all that scary, but because of all the subtextual imagery that he's getting in with the way he's lining up shots and sticking things in at the right time and what he's trying to say, and just like, whoa. So there are a lot of people doing a lot of work, and it's amazing to see it. And
have you ever seen that
Pardon me?
I was just going to say, Jay, have you ever seen that documentary, The Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah, I have.
What do you think the purpose behind that was? Do you think it was just to throw people off the scent, so that basically if someone comes up with the theory that Kubrick directed the moon landing, that then they just confuse it with that mockumentary, or what?
Well, I think
it's just to muddy the waters.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Apparently, a French film crew got an interview with his wife, right after he died sometime. And, she kind of, let the cat out of the bag. She's talking about how NASA gave him the lenses for Barry Lyndon, and Stanley's got a secret file, and, you know what I mean? It's just this kind of, the way she looks in the interview, and then like I got a secret, and then, I think it was just a little bit too revealing, this interview, and, they, got the film back, and somebody on the controllers got a hold of this, found out this crew had this film, and got a copy of it from them, and then built the most outlandishly stupid, theory, built in the first 10 minutes are with Mrs. Kubrick, and the last 40 minutes are just this pretty outlandish, silly conspiracy. What an edit hatchet job. A good lesson for anyone interested in, though, how to make someone say something that you want them to say without, through editing. So other than that, a useless film put out by somebody. I don't know who. But it was just a hatchet job to try to make sure that the interview with Mrs. Kubrick was forever attached to a bunch of lunacy.
Has she ever come out publicly and stated anything else to anybody that you know of, aside from them?
I've heard that she's very interested in my work, and now that I know that Cement, who's probably her age, is virtually aping my theories, then I think we can all agree now that, they're all staying away from the moon landing. Hey, no problem. I don't blame you, but come on. You're going with the rest of it. That's pretty good.
Jay, Kubrick was noted as being kind of a conspiracy, fanatical research type.
Was he? You heard that?
Yeah, and there was an interview in the British press where somebody had access to him and his, his estate, and he had all kinds of old conspiratorial magazines lying around, and that was one of the questions. I think, for example, in Eyes Wide Shut, where they say Fidelio as the password, besides being Beethoven's only opera, it was also the name of a LaRouche publication, 25 years ago or something.
Oh, really?
Things like that. And, it's, you might know far more than I, but certainly when we look at the body of his work, I think you get a feeling that if he's a fanatical researcher about other things, preparing for movies or whatever, the history of the Nazi Party or stuff like that, that kind of mindset easily gets into what you and I might call conspiracy research.
I think that's always the bottom of the barrel, isn't it? You're digging way down. You finally realize that, oh my God, of course there's somebody at the top pulling the strings and everything, because there has to be. Well, suddenly there's a truncation on the pyramid, and then of course it becomes easy to understand what's going on, so this is the whole thing. So where's it going, and where's it pushing, and that's what he was trying to reveal, is where the machine is headed. And even he tries to describe the thing that there's no doubt that he believes that there's this very controlling force over humanity, and he describes it, three different ways in his films. He describes it once as an off-planet intelligence, which intrudes on the human race in their early stages in 2001, and then he comes at it again as a demonic force that can have a power of place that gets inside you in The Shining, and then finally as an all too human but eerie and maybe having supernatural powers from the way that they left the mask at the end of the movie would indicate that the third group or aspect of this other driving force behind humanity is also a secret society. And so that's kind of and this is a bright guy, and he had his chance, and maybe we would have gotten a fourth angle on it. I think we would have in AI. So we have to just understand what he's trying to tell us.
Do you think that there was an element of talking about the Saturn cult in any of this?
Yeah, I do. I believe that's why he wanted to make the monolith, just like in the book, he wanted it to be on the moon Iapetus, which is a moon of Saturn. That was the plan. And we now know that Iapetus is a world with very strange features that make it appear to be artificial, with a giant mountain that runs right down the center seam of it. It looks like a walnut with hexagonal craters, and but we didn't find any of this out till much later. But it was denied he was denied, or he decided, not to do the rings and make it Jupiter, which is in its own way kind of a a message like, you cannot reveal the hidden secret. You can only reveal that which we lay over the secret, or that which is allowed to govern locally, which is, Jupiter or Jehovah, which is just Jupiter. He's the same thing. Jehovah is Jove, Jove is Jupiter. So Jehovah is by the Gnostics thought he was the false god.
Right. But Arthur C. Clarke did use Saturn, right?
That's right. And Arthur never gets it wrong. And he was allowed to, because the book they weren't watching the book. Had zinged by him, but, and it wasn't like Stanley and Arthur were trying to reveal things. They were marveling at what, at the whole symbolic nature of the whole thing. And, they liked it. It wasn't really, if you look at Clockwork Orange, you can see that he has now turned to a darkness. That all of the transcendental light of the ending of 2001 are completely gone, by his next film. And which came out really pretty fast on the heels. 3 years it took from the end of 2001, the release date, to the release of Clockwork Orange. And you can see that he's definitely taken a sour turn on things, and that is why. And that is why you see. So there's and then I think that's when he went into his estate, and went in and built the big wall around it and all that. And people said he was a recluse and everything. He really didn't want to see anybody, and probably he saw something that he really didn't want to see. Is probably what happened, and but he was still dangled by the edges of the thing, and he had what no filmmaker ever had, which was a free ticket to make what you want, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
But you had another theory, though. You had the theory that maybe somebody saw something that he shouldn't have and ended up paying the price. Right? If that had happened, you could understand he would become more of a recluse, right?
That's absolutely right. He definitely had something. If you read the changes that he put in The Shining from Stephen King, it would seem to say that his own working the secret project and telling someone about it got that someone killed. And who that is, I do not know. I haven't been able to find out, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it doesn't surprise anybody anymore after like Michael Hastings. And we're all kind of, it's all becoming kind of obvious that it happens all the time.
Well, if they can take out Kennedy, I mean,
they
can take out anybody, can't they?
You get too close to what they're doing,
And actually, that's another aspect of this that I think you've talked about, is that maybe President Kennedy, when he pushed the space program, we're going to the moon and back, a manned mission to the moon and back, was trying to force these magicians, these Nazi magicians, to kind of put their cards on the table and show that they had the technology to do that. And, in Wernher von Braun's autobiography, it's only, I think, available in German, but he states that he had a big fight with Kennedy the day before Kennedy was assassinated. He came down there, and according to the autobiography, they were arguing over what propulsion system to use. And I thought that was quite revealing. So it's possible that Kennedy was making political maneuvers that put NASA or the Nazi magicians in a bad situation, and that may have contributed to his untimely demise.
Well, I mean, it was like you have to. You start out with other facts like NASA centered in Houston, and Houston is congressman is George Bush Sr., and the two ships that were used at the Bay of Pigs were centered in Houston. They're called the USS Houston and the USS Barbara. And you look at Johnson, and then you look at the Oil Boys, the Hunt brothers, or looking at hearing these rumors that this, what, they're going to trying to release, the stuff, whatever the stuff is, which is actually just able to, burn electricity, as Tesla knew, right from the world that surrounds us, because we live in an electric universe. And gathering electricity and getting power is not really all that more difficult of a thing. Just that we just haven't made the leap to figure it out. But others have, and so now we're being put into the place where we either have that energy, or we're going to have hundreds of Fukushimas, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And so it's like time, to release it. And it was time then, and it probably would have been a lot better world. And maybe they won't release it now because they want to do the fracking and the shale and the, the big money. So we'll see whether this time we get it released or not. But there's no doubt that JFK was shown the technology, because Marilyn Monroe told people about it. There's FOIAs that show her telling people that Jack showed me the alien UFO stuff, and it's like once you look at how the places where the Germans went, from the time that Hitler got into power to the time, actually, it looks like all the way to the very end. These secret groups were, going to different places all over the earth, to Peru and to North Africa and to Tibet, and just everywhere. France, south of France, Italy, just pouring out, Ethiopia, and going into all these places, and with force in a lot of ways, and using and after occult artifacts. And at a certain point, you have to wonder what they're looking for and why they're spending so much resources doing all this. And then you realize that at one point they must have gotten into contact with something, and that's when the turning point was. And maybe the whole point wasn't so much for a victory per se, but to have to use the war as kind of a cover to achieve certain things that you couldn't normally achieve unless you had, the right purpose. And so something was seen and achieved at that point which changed the game. And it could be something as simple as the red mercury that Joseph Farrell thinks, some kind of alchemical thing that is used to create energy that allows things to power up easily. And and you look at some of the things that just seems that we hit a glass ceiling years ago, and we haven't been able to get beyond it. And I think probably it's time, but maybe not. Maybe the powers that be still want to hold on.
Well, or maybe the West will collapse more or less, and then Asia or other parts of the world will rise. I mean, it's an open question at this point. By the way, Jay, did you know that a lot of people in the JFK world think that an Argentine Mauser was actually what was used, and then it was replaced with a Mannlicher Carcano. And if so, that would be most interesting because the Mauser was the German World War II rifle, and it was specially made in Argentina, which gives this whole Nazi space program feeling, right? All the research and stuff they did down in Argentina after the war.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it at all. It makes total sense. There's all sorts of fingerprints of these groups all over the assassination. It was a power game, and they didn't want to lose any of the power that was to be gained at that point. There was a lot of players, and it was pretty much a gang war between the young upstarts and the old new money but old farts, like the Hunt brothers, who are never going to give up on the things that they controlled. And so the oil boys are palling with the NASA boys, right? Then the oil boys knew before anybody that NASA boys had found something that would put them out of business. And the oil boys of all the world at that time were in Texas. And there's no one that can say that any of those statements is wrong at all.
Well, clearly the oil boys have been in the saddle for a long time, but like Joseph Farrell, I'm wondering if the guys with the motherships aren't making their move. But that's a long topic. By the way, we've got a guest here, BBB, who has a question. You want to go ahead?
Hi there.
Hi.
I just wanted to briefly talk about John Carter. See if it has strong correlations to everything that's being discussed, and wanted to hear some thoughts.
Yeah, that's a very Carter is actually a pretty interesting movie, and I think it again. If I didn't miss my guess, I would say that the I can't quite figure out how that film got made, and I look at the publicity campaign, the marketing campaign for it, and it was just so pathetic. I mean, why would you call the film John Carter? Why call it Carter of Mars? Anything better than just calling it John Carter. But they didn't call it Carter of Mars or anything like that. They chose the worst possible name. No one will come because you don't know anything or gain anything from that title. So the marketing was all wrong. I think it could have even been done purposely, just to bury the film, make sure that no one ever saw it. It's really too bad. It's actually a pretty interesting film, and I tell everyone maybe you should see it because outside of the stupidity of the guy leaping into the air. Once you get used to it, you can forgive that absolutely dumb prank. You can appreciate the fact that we're talking about a species who moves from planet to planet, and they're featured in the film, and they're exactly in the description that I and Mac Tonys and a lot of other people have chosen for this race that lives here on Earth and that came from somewhere else. Now, the thing that's fascinating about all that is that the text from the Vedic texts from India, the really ancient ones, the Puranas, which are oral texts, which were finally written down thousands of years ago, but been passed down from generation to generation verbatim for tens of thousands of years, possibly before that. And they talk about creatures that were once human, but were changed somehow, and that they came back from a planet called Mahar, which was nearby, to after the solar catastrophe. They're very emphatic, the Puranas, that there's a periodic solar catastrophe that purges the whole planet, and we now know that this is very, very possible and likely, and it can actually be one of the changes things of evolution, if you believe in evolution. But anyway, so this when you look at the totality of the whole magnitude of what's being said, it's like whoa, and I think I think in the end we're going to know soon, but I believe that we've already been to Mars, or somebody's on Mars already. And I believe that the creatures that have been here who have lived apart from us, I believe, it's the only way that you can explain so many of the really ancient sightings. You just have to come to grips with the fact that there are a group of beings that are really seriously advanced, and they live apart from us, but they may walk among us too at night. I don't know. And they look like the beings that are featured in John Carter. And I don't know if and the guy has a speech, and it's a great actor, and I forget his name, who plays the lead archon, and they have the ability. They actually do the best job ever in what I would say the archons are like. And one of the things that he could do in the movie, he's tall and he's bald, is that he could change reality in a flash. No one could see him do it. He was so fast, and that was awesome, because that's the archons. They can change reality, make you think of something else than what you're watching. And so it was kind of like, oh wow! But the movie was really good. The way that they transported back and forth to Mars, and the archons, and the speech that the guy makes about how they're, they don't care about anybody or anything. They're just there to suck the life out of everything. And they're headed to Earth next, and it's like, whoa. Yeah. And the time period also, late 1870s, 1860s, You think about how that became then the time and place for the beginning of an invasion, let's say 1890 or so, of an invasion of these entities.
Beyond the CERN, and I remember the actual statement that they feed upon our fear, and that was a kind of a detailed description of more reality than science fiction. And I was curious what you think about the type of travel when he compares it to a telegraph of himself. It seems, in that situation, as in that movie, the correlations to reality are very strong, and there's not much you can do to validate any of that. But I was curious on your opinion.
Well, which movie are you talking about?
The when he talks of being faxed or being telegraphed in terms of Mars settlements.
John Carter, I believe.
Well, are you talking about today, you mean? Right now, real settlements?
Yeah, I'm talking about the correlations to reality.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that, there's ruins on Mars, and but there's also active places, apparently, according to the work of MarsAnomalyResearch.com. There's stuff there all over the place, and I don't think it's what they've been telling us it is. So I think people are listening and getting it out into movies, and then maybe the movies aren't going to be all that successful. And I think, you know, in this case, that's one of it. That's what he was trying to say. It's clear that way. And then at the very end, he's, you know, using the whole thing as a trick to kill one of the Archons as they're coming in the gate, you know. So it's pretty kind of great in a way.
Since we're taking a little detour away from Kubrick, what are your thoughts about the movie Capricorn 1, and how the hell do you think they got that released?
Again, you know, you don't know. That way they could cop, you know, that, you know, I don't know. That's a good question. They didn't try to bury the film. A lot of people liked it. And maybe it was just to throw off the growing suspicion at the time that the moon landing was a total fraud, which was beginning to grow, you know, at that time. And then, we'll just talk about Mars and offset everything and have it be on Mars, you know, that it happens like in the future sometime. And, you know, so I don't know. You know, they did the same thing in the movie Diamonds Are Forever. Sean Connery, you know, stumbles in Vegas, near Vegas somewhere. He stumbles onto you know, the moon landing set with the rover and everything, and then he kind of walks through it. I even think he might steal the rover and drive off. I can't remember. And you know, so there's all these indications of in other people's films, you know, of Kubrick's touches, and that they know in some way about what's really going on. There's a scene in Toy Story and Toy Story came out way before I came out with my Shining theory. So I don't know if you guys know this, but it's worth checking out. Where Buzz Lightyear, who's one of the stars of Toy Story, just like Buzz Aldrin, right? Buzz Lightyear is he's in Toyville, and the toys come alive when the humans aren't around, in case you don't know the subtext of the story. And you know, the humans buy their newest great toy, you know, Buzz Lightyear, and he's an astronaut. He travels in the stars, and he's a hero. And the cowboy who was the favorite toy is like pushed under the bed, and now everybody's jealous of Buzz Lightyear, and Buzz Lightyear, you know, actually walks around like he's a big hero. And everybody tells Buzz, the cowboy tells Buzz Lightyear that he's not really a hero, he's just a toy. And, you know, because he's jealous. And Buzz Lightyear is like, no, I'm not. I'm really a hero. And so time goes on, and then one day Buzz Lightyear walks in front of the TV, and he sees an ad for a toy for himself. And in that moment, he becomes aware that he's not, but really Buzz Lightyear. He's a nothing, actually, a fraud. And so there's this really sad music, and then he walks up. He walks up to a hallway, and in the hallway is the same exact replica of the floor used where Danny is playing with his trucks in The Shining as wallpaper. The same exact design is all same color scheme, everything taken right from The Shining is on the wall. In this hallway that Buzz Lightyear is in. Buzz Lightyear crawls up the hand railing or the banister, and he stands up in front of a window where there's the moon outside, and he tries to take off because to prove to himself that he's really not a toy, he's really the big, huge hero, Buzz Lightyear. And he jumps, and he falls, and he crashes, and he breaks his leg off, and, you know. Anyway, that's the story from Toy Story.
That's almost reminiscent of what happened to Bart Sibrel when he tried to confront Buzz Aldrin. He told him he was a fake, and he got decked in the eye.
Yeah, I'd be careful about that. Yeah, I don't try to confront them. I don't know what they think, you know. the I tell the story quite a bit, but I guess it's my privilege to be able to tell it. One of the people I knew in my life, who's now deceased, is a great hypnotherapist, and he's just an amazing guy. He was a husband of Gene Houston. His name is Bob Masters, and he's friends with Margaret Mead and all these people. And I was talking to him one time, and he told me that Ed Mitchell of Apollo 14 came to him, in the early 70s, and they went through huge hypnotic sessions together because Ed Mitchell could not remember what happened to him on the moon. And then I said, "Wow, did you ever find out what happened?" He said, "No, we never did." So
Well,
go figure.
If you look at them in the interviews just after the moon landings, I mean, they look like zombies or depressed or something. They look really bizarre.
It's truly an amazing thing to watch. That's all I can say. The body language is so painful, and poor Neil Armstrong. That fucker, he really doesn't want to be there. And he's looking down, going, "Get me out of here! Get me out of here! Please, God, get me out of here!" And they look like their dog just died. I can't determine if they're dad or their dog, but they look like something like that. And it's beyond belief. And I don't know what to say. Once you start piling up the evidence in The Shining with the front screen projection from 2001, and then you see that he's nailing a secret society, in Eyes Wide Shut, so it becomes kind of clear and obvious.
Well, one of the points you've raised is that the dimensions of the monolith are essentially the same as the dimensions of the film screen.
Yep.
And one of the more modern theories that's floating around now is that the monolith is representative of, say, an iPad or an iPhone. Just wondering what your take was on that. Thank you for that, because I've noticed that myself. And I'm going to make a bet, I can't prove it, that Steve Jobs was not just a fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey, that he might be a fan of my theories on 2001. And I just wonder if that wasn't like a parting shot of his out the door to make sure that the iPhone is shaped just like the monolith, because it's incredible. And what a incredible way to work an icon, right? I mean, ingenious. You have to admit, no matter what you think of marketing and bullshit advertising, that is a way to work an archetype inculcated into the culture by making the iPhone look just like the monolith. So you think it was life imitating art rather than art imitating life, I guess, right?
Well, I think Jobs was an artist, and I think you're going to see probably the demise of Apple because of his death. So I think he was an artist, and he probably was a big fan of Kubrick, I imagine, as most of us were in my generation, and really liked the monolith and the perfect shape, in a way, if you think about it. It's the most satisfying of all movie screen ratios is the monolith. It's the one that's most like our eyesight, if you know what I mean. Right, a certain wideness to it that is just extremely pleasing to the eye. And Kubrick was celebrating that, in a way, with the monolith, being also the movie screen, that transforms the audience while they're in the dark, using light to completely transmute a generation and prepare them for 2001.
In your Oh, go ahead, Blaine.
Speaking of the balance and the screen, how do people in the film or whatever video industry feel about your idea that you can see front screen projection in the Apollo stills or whatever?
No one has. Oh, there's one guy that disputes me, but his dispute. Are you there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's something. But his dispute is based on based on the fact that is actually a remission of mine. I should have probably added it into the movie. I was trying to get it out as fast as I could, and is the fact that Kubrick didn't just rely on front screen projection. That was only one of an arsenal that he had, that he used. What else he did for the moving shots with the rover, which I think is pretty obvious if you look at the films, is that he built a round set with the camera in the center, and then he put gigantic blow-ups of the same exact scene that he was using for front screen projection. He used the same exact images, and he for every one of these, especially 14, 15, 16, 17, and then he blew up these things into large, huge photographs, tacked them onto boards, and then he put it into a circle around this center stage and lit everything from above with one big, huge HMI. And then he just, he went around in a circle, and he never lost focus or anything. And that's why you get the weird, so then you can just drive your rover around in a circle, and it looks like you're going around this landscape. This technique's been used many times, in movies. They did it in The Matrix, for instance, the scene where they're hanging from the helicopter that was shot on a stage, or they took photographs of downtown Sydney and just blew them up, stuck them on the floor, stuck them on the wall, and then the actors hung on ropes, cables, from these things, and were just they were only like 3 feet off the ground. If you understand what I'm saying. So Kubrick used a lot of techniques to do the thing right.
But what's the general view of the professionals, I guess you would say? What do they think?
Not one single, a lot of praise, and a lot of people dumbfounded, and not that many critical, actually. That's what's really amazing. I went at this conference I was at, which was about The Shining. Leon Vitale, his assistant, was there, and so was other people that were, big up in Hollywood. And I was kind of actually stunned. I thought I was going to be alone on this panel of a bunch of people, fighting, for my, I'm the wacko, and you're going to attack me from all angles. And I came in knowing that this was going to happen to me and got steeled up for it. But outside of Leon Vitale putting those fingers into a cross and calling me a demon, but that's okay. He had a little bit to drink. Everything was fine. The others, and particularly the director of a number of Stephen King's films, I could see even he, was like the way that Vitale tried to blow off a lot of the people that we've been talking about. All the theories, the moving furniture, there's a number of theories, right, going on about The Shining. And he was confronted by all of them. And every time he came to, an explanation, he was always like, oh, it was a last-minute decision. Oh, Kubrick didn't care if the chair was there or not. He doesn't care about anything. It was like Stanley was just a sloppy pig, and that he didn't care about anything. That was his answer to everything. And it was like, I see. The guy that is known for taking take after take, for being so meticulous that he writes down everything that goes on, shoots hundreds of Polaroids a day, to make sure that everything is stuck in the same place where it was, right? Is not moving a chair back and forth behind Jack Nicholson while he's typing a book, right? Well, no, he is. And, and so this was but I could see that the one point in the conference, the Apollo 11 sweater from The Shining came up, and he goes, "Oh, that was the somebody assistant who sewed it over the weekend and just brought it on the set one day, and Stanley grabbed it and put it on." And that was his explanation, right, for the Apollo 11 sweater. And there's like this complete silence across the whole rest of the board as they looked at him, like with their jaws open. And then this one director, whose name escapes me at the moment, but he's directed like 4 or 5 Stephen King films. He looks straight out at the crowd and goes, "That just happened to have the Apollo 11 rocket taking off." And you can see that. And then, I really got the idea, because he was good friends with Stephen King, that, Stephen King probably may even think that my theories hold a lot of water and might explain a lot of the mysteries that he encountered in his short encounters with Stanley.
Well, he didn't care at all for what was done, right? He considered his
No,
story,
it was a huge... in the film, when what's his name, Halloran, is running up to the mountain to going to rent the snow machine, he passes a crash on the highway, and there's a semi that smashed a red VW into down into a pancake, and the book by King, the Jack, the character, he had a red VW, and in the movie he had a yellow one. And this was only one person in the whole world understood what that smashed VW meant. Well, 2 people, I mean. One was Stanley Kubrick, and the other was Stephen King when he first saw the film. And it basically said, "Hey, this is my vehicle. This is what I think of your vehicle. So, stuff off," pretty much.
Do you think that that snow machine was sort of his representation of the lunar module, or of the lunar rover?
Yeah, there's a lot of those things that are weird, like the 11s and stuff, and just the whole the Shining. We think of moonshine, and and it's just there's a lot of those allusions to it. But yeah, it does look like the lunar rover and the whiteness, and kind of like, ha, I'm on a really hot set, and in the Pinewood Studios, and I can make it look like I'm in a forest, driving through the snow, with just salt and some trees that he grabbed from somewhere. That's what I like about the movie and that's what I like about Eyes Wide Shut. Too, and also Full Metal Jacket, especially at the beginning. No, through the whole movie, is that the set to reality, the location to reality, is so contradictory that it's jarring. So you're like in Vietnam, but you can see people's breath. You're in the middle of the big blizzard, and you're out running through the snow with your axe, but you can't see your breath. It's just so many contradictions. Somehow they work, and what they do is they mentally screw with you, so that the contradiction itself becomes the fascination.
I think the smoking gun in your movies is really the front screen projection. How did you determine that that's what it might be? Did Hoagland come up with his theories first with by adjusting the gamma, and then that tipped you off, or?
Well, it tipped me off there was something there, and on the Apollo stuff, but there was something there. And being a curious guy, I wanted to know what it was. But I could never buy the 20-mile-high glass cities that have secret geometries that no one can see.
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, I just couldn't buy it. I was like, okay, no, wait, you got something here, but that's not what it is. But that's not to say that, like, the pictures that he has of, that were taken, like, with the lunar orbiters and those other missions, those are true. Those early missions, they captured a lot of weird stuff. And that's a booming secret, believe me. There were missions before that, but the real ones caught up in the early '60s, and that was the real shocker for everyone. And so there is. I'm not saying that there isn't stuff there. I'm saying that there was just accidentally a leap with the stuff on the ground. And the stuff on the ground was just done, in a studio with a stage. And at first, there is no front screen projection. Apollo 11, it's just some guys walking around in front of a completely black background. And then Apollo 12, we lose the camera. It's a very much tragedy. The well-trained astronauts. The first thing they did as soon as they set the camera up was turned it towards the sun and burned out the sensors. Then Apollo 13 didn't quite get there, but they made a movie about it, the only movie they really have made about the Apollo program, and except for, really the only one that's about the actual Apollo going to the moon program. And I think it was odd that the one movie being ever made was about the one that never went. But the nice thing about Apollo 13, well worth watching, besides a lot of great symbolism in the movie, is that Tom Hanks in the movie has a dream that he gets actually on the moon. And if you watch that particular scene, it's using, it's just the phoniest set screen you've ever seen. And I don't know what to say. So the only way that Hollywood's ever gotten close was the worst looking special effects in the entire movie, and they had to make it a dream because it was so horrible. So that was the only time they went to the moon, was in a dream. So then Apollo 14 is when you really first see the first use of the front screen projection, and you can see that they're getting better with it. And that's the other thing. Each mission, the technology is a little bit more advanced, a little better. Lighting is getting better. A few times Kubrick is showing off with lighting that is absolutely impossible on the moon, but would look great in a film like Barry Lyndon or Eyes Wide Shut. And in fact, it looks just like some of the lighting for those movies. So it's by 17, he's got it really rocking. He's using a big set. But he's also using, like I said, multiple things going on. And he's splitting the work between two different studios, so no one can quite figure out what's going on. And it's all being testing for for what he was going to do, which has really turned out to be a breakthrough special effects movie. And that was because he had been able to do all of this R&D. So it begat his knowledge, and he, used that to then, make the most rad science fiction movie that's ever been made.
There's another angle to this, though, that to a lot of us is, I would say, more convincing, and that is the circumstantial case with things like the funding. I mean, 2001 had an incredible budget, right?
Oh, it did.
And there was, I think it was the head of the studio, but maybe it was the number 2 in the studio or something, was interviewed about, right as it was about to come out. Have you seen it? What do you think? And he essentially said, well, I haven't seen it yet, and, I hope it works because we've spent, 5 times more than ever has been spent on a movie, and if it's a bomb, we go out of business.
Yeah.
And when you hear something like that and you sit there and say, that's not the way the world works. You don't, you are controlled when you're working for somebody.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the most revealing, sentences ever. The guy's like copying it. He was one of the top, producers. I'm forgetting his name now, of at MGM at the time. But he was like releasing a lot of films that were very interesting, and at the same time, he was the guy that really made the '70s later by releasing a lot of the more challenging '70s movies that were pretty good. So, but yeah, he basically says, I don't know, I've never seen the cut of it. I was like, what? You know, and the same thing, you know, goes on down the line, and nobody really was, and he was able to do it, and probably.
Yeah, the original, Jay, the original version when 2001 came out had all these credits dedicated to, you know, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, right?
Yeah, I have them all. Actually, I have all the credits, all the companies that have been thanked, and they're all exactly the companies that were building all the stuff for NASA. You know, and you know, I just let everybody know. I'm not saying that we didn't go to the moon. I'm just saying that what we saw on the screen was these fake images.
Right, and you make a strong case for that. But I would just say that also then look at the after 2001. Think about other things like music. Let's say somebody has a big hit. Can the rest of his life he just do what he wants? No, not really, not unless he uses all his own money, because it's a business, right? And so Kubrick, for the next 30 years, is just doing what he wants.
Yep, the only guy that can do it. And that is like such a bell. You should just, you know, ring everybody's bell. How can a guy just, you know, have this like free ticket to just go, you know, make these movies? And he doesn't really seem to have any problem with anything. He just does whatever he wants, and he has lots of time to think about it. And it's like amazing. You know, and when he started considering the whole picture, he became their filmmaker, and he realized after, you know, probably after Full Metal Jacket, that he really didn't want to play the game anymore, and then he felt for some reason that you know, it was okay to come out. Somehow the tide was turning in the late '90s, and he must have felt, or maybe possibly he knew that the great planned transformation of humanity that was planned for 2001 was about to happen. He wanted to do a 1-2 punch with Eyes Wide Shut, and then have AI released in 2001, which I think was his plan, and then he would retire. And but you know, he didn't get that far, and so that's what AI is about, and what it was going to be about was this planned, but from this dark angle, if you understand what I mean, very dark angle, as if the transformation was not this great and glorious transformation. It was more akin to something like the ending of Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, where an off-planet race first subjugates humanity and destroys its culture, and then after the old guard die out and they don't remember the old culture because they've just died away, the new culture then has its children taken by these off-planet entities, and then everybody is killed, essentially, after they've grabbed their children. You can say what you want about, you know, Childhood's End, and it's a great book, and I love the book, and you know, it shocked me when I read it, and I know people would not say that interpretation I gave you is the right interpretation. That's really, it's about the transformation of humanity, and they're all ascending, and all that, and the children are ascending in it, and everything, and maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but I can say this: absolutely, the aliens come, the overlords come, and they take the children from humanity, and then let everybody die. And if I don't miss my guess, you know, that's what you know, some of these ideas behind AI might have been.
Well, it's speculation at this point, but I think you also talk about archons and other things. There's definitely the chance that the people we're seeing, like the Rothschilds or whoever, are essentially the managers, right?
Yeah, but they've married in. That's been their kind of goal, is their marrying habits are that the firstborn male has to marry a cousin. It can't be further than that outside the realm of the thing. And then, but the woman, or sister or daughter, she has to marry into the bloodline, the royal bloodline, which is the I don't know what they are, crypto-terrestrial. They're the tall white creatures that, and these bloodlines are the closest in the blood to this race of beings that share the planet with us, that has actually kind of in some ways enslaved us to be, do work for them. And so that's what I think, and I think he was fascinated with that because I think Hitler was fascinated with that and may have been an emissary of that of some kind even. And I think, Stanley was really quite interested in the whole idea that there was this off-planet entity that was controlling the human race.
So do you think that's what the ultimate secret is on the moon, Jay? Do you think it's similar to, I think David Icke's got a theory that there's some type of control center or something on the moon. And I know Ingo Swann is reputed to have remote viewed the moon and detected an alien presence there that wasn't particularly benevolent. Just wondering what your thoughts on that were. I know it's speculative, but curious.
Yeah, well, is it? It's there's a crater, Aristarchus, on the moon. I don't know if you know this, or you might. You just type in blue dome Aristarchus crater, and you'll get it. And what's interesting about that is that there's a NASA report, which you can probably read on the internet, which was compiled in 1967, I think, or 68, finally after a few years, and it basically looked at all of the astronomers who had noticed anything anomalous on the moon over the hundreds of years of observation by telescopes. And it was hundreds of listings of bright flashes and sudden structures that were seen and then missing and all sorts of stuff that was it's really fascinating. You can read it. The number one place of anomalous activity in this report was the crater Aristarchus. Now, when Apollo went over Aristarchus, all of them, it's just a big, huge, bleached out white nothing. You can't see anything. But
that's just a coincidence, I'm sure, Jay.
Yes, I'm sure. But when Clementine went over in the 90s, it snapped two pictures, and it's a huge blue dome. And it's quite clear that there's something very odd going on. And then a home astronomer caught it with a 10-inch, like about 2 years ago, just the right moment, and caught it and completely duplicating it. That might be photoshopped. I don't know. He claims it's a real shot, but the other shots are real. And no one's talked about it yet. Here we have in this report, all these sightings at Aristarchus, and then we have actually a military, observation, imagery thing, finding Aristarchus. So.
I've heard somewhere that some private companies had planned to do some private probes, and the U.S. military threatened to shoot them down. And I'm curious what's going to happen when other countries like India and China start sending probes up there.
Well, they have Kubricks too, right?
Yes, they have. Well,
like that China. Did you see the China thing? When they went in space, they're spacewalking.
No,
didn't it look like they needed to hire Kubrick?
I'd like to see that. I hadn't seen it. Must have been a riot. Well, they have permission now, it looks, to go and see things, and they're probably agreed on to keep things secret, or things are falling apart. This one's more likely, or things are falling apart so quickly that the U.S. can't hang on to its dominion anymore, and the Chinese and the Indians and everybody are going to get up there and they're going to find it, and then they're going to, break their vow and release the pictures, and we're going to see like all sorts of weird stuff, and probably that's what's going to happen. I think the barriers are breaking, and we're going to have a full state of awareness pretty soon. So, I don't know when and if they're going to put a stop to all of it. Maybe they'll put a stop to it tonight. Who knows?
I'm sure everyone will jump on board to your theory at that point, eh?
Yeah.
Well, there is an awakening going on. There's no question about that.
Oh yeah, it's full-scale awakening. It's just isn't going to happen fast enough. It's reaching into the second levels of the awakening now. Now it's going beyond just kind of a bunch of people chatting somewhere to people who are interested in really doing it in an activist kind of way. So a lot of rising up against GMOs and you can see that the people who have the answers are going to win, and the ones that have been BSing us are going to lose, and because now we're in the age of information.
For sure. I think a big part of it is just that in the past, when it was a lot harder to get information, let's say 40 years ago, people could rationalize things away, right? But now, it's so obvious that we're all under attack, right? That it's harder and harder to keep the illusion. It's a lot of work to stay unawake now. And so I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. But I am concerned. Like we know there's this, like Blavatsky talked about, externalization of the hierarchy. It's kind of like the bad guys are taking off the masks too, right?
I'm going to answer this, and I'm probably going to have to go. Yeah, that's what's going on. Now we're in the most dangerous period because it's not working. I believe that Obama and Putin were working together to make sure that we didn't go to war in Syria, and Obama just been posturing to keep the neocon dogs off from chewing off his foot. I'm not, we don't praise Obama a whole lot, so in this particular case, I think he might be actually doing a bit of theater to keep himself from getting hurt, if you know what I mean. And Putin was actually kind of helping him. So I'm saying these things, and I'm seeing a realignment quickly of the way things are going, and things are going to get very interesting right now. Very interesting. I don't know if they can pull off what they're trying to pull off.
Well, we shall see. But the curse is, may you live in interesting times, and I think we've been cursed. But thank you so much, Jay. We really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay,
we really we've enjoyed your stuff, and your website is sacredmysteries.com. And you have a couple of documentaries on Kubrick, and then eventually a third one coming out, right?
That's right. And a new movie called Shasta, which is a feature film.
That's right. You want to tell us what that's about briefly?
It's about it's a fantasy film about what would happen if the 10th avatar of Vishnu, who is prophesized to return at the end of time and smite the liars and bring back light. What if he actually came, like the ancient Vedic texts say? And so I just try to imagine, putting it in a modern kind of notion, and then putting it through and seeing what he would actually do. How would you defeat, the Illuminati, or not the Illuminati? How would you bring truth without getting killed, but at the same time do it without killing either? So anyway, it's just an exercise in kind of remything an ancient prophecy, and it's just a fun film, really. More than anything
sounds
else.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's call it a wrap for this week. We do appreciate it. Take care,
man.
and
Thank you.
thanks everyone. Oolong.